Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Brand Building in 15 Minutes. And for those of you on the administrative side of things at your firm, happy Administrative Professionals Day. I'm Jocelyn Brumbaugh. I am the founder of Build & Partners, and I'm so excited to have you here today for our April webinar. Buckle up. Legal ops for the new normal. So you know us, we are Build & Partners. We do marketing strategy for law firms and only law firms. And we do that because of our awesome senior team. We all grew up in large law firms, so we get it. And so we're able to serve as an outsourced marketing department for firms with 20 to 150 attorneys. And then we also do a lot of project work for AM law firms, helping to develop and support the initiatives that lawyers and marketing and BD teams at AM law firms dream up. But we are so excited to have you here today to talk about legal operations with the newest member of the Build & team, Grace Coe. Grace has a long history of law firm operations expertise. I said expertise, it's okay in this context. She has a long history of legal ops expertise from her time as a risk manager at Baker McKenzie to her current role as principal administrator at Hinkhouse Williams Walsh. Because in addition to that role, Grace is consulting with us and building out our legal operations practice. And today she's going to share best practices for legal operations in the new world that we live in. And here's why. It's because when it comes to law firm operations, you should never settle for good enough. And so Grace, welcome. You've got 15 minutes and we're not settling for 16.
Thank you, Jocelyn, and thank you everybody for joining us. So we're super excited to launch this new arm of Build-In. And let's just start talking about old school legal ops. So we all know what that looks like. You know, your executive committees and senior partners dictate, your associates take direction, FaceTime and suits and in-office presence are the norm. Law firms never really struggled to find talent, and technology, yeah, it was important, but it was often behind the times. And your cash flow was predictable. You know, your clients were consistent, as were your vendor contracts, right? Those renewals were pretty routine. Millennials from 10 to 15 years ago definitely started forcing some change upon the industry. And your focus then started turning towards flexible work environments and, you know, feedback and meaningful work. And parallel to that, technology was just growing by leaps and bounds. So law firms were already forced into, you know, a different sort of mindset. But then, boom, COVID. So COVID absolutely forced that slow-moving barge of law firms to quickly adapt to a new way of operating. So what is the new normal? Most of us during, you know, early 2020 threw together whatever quick and available solutions we could find to immediately pivot into a remote working scenario, and all those technological and human resource challenges that came along with it. You know, we finally now have some breathing room. Hopefully this continues, right? To evaluate those lessons learned from that transition, peel off those Band-Aids that we quickly slapped on, and implement some sustainable workplace changes to advance the critical operating areas of your firm. And what are those critical areas? Your culture and structure, human resources, technology, finance, and vendor management. So we'll go through these one by one. So firms are definitely now going through an identity crisis. Who are we? You know, partner preferences definitely matter. So, you know, are you going to stay a traditional firm? Are you moving to a hybrid role? Are you allowing for full-time remote scenarios? You know, you need to reconcile those partner preferences with how employees operated during COVID and how they're reacting to coming back to normal, right? And your normal operations also need to balance those partner demands and client demands. So, you know, are your partners trained on managing remote staff? Most are not. How are you going to transfer knowledge? How are you effectively training and promoting growth? And engagement and socialization is a huge thing. Like at the beginning of 2020, Zoom happy hours were all the rage, but that fizzled out in about 3 minutes because no one wanted to do it anymore. And many, and how are you monitoring productivity with associates? It's simple because you look at billable hours. What about staff? How are you making sure that they're engaged and productive? So, some of these reasons, many firms definitely still prefer a traditional model. They want people in the office. The biggest benefit to that is that your attorneys and staff are engaged, and training is so much easier. There's a lot to be said for just hearing the conversations and working with your partners when you're sitting across from them. So, what sort of accommodations are you making because of that? Are you implementing a remote work policy just to address every individual's unique situation? You may have a parent with small children at home, that you don't have any other options. So what sort of accommodations are you putting in place? The biggest takeaway here is to be honest about what kind of firm you are and communicate it, so your associates and staff are not confused by the culture that they're in. So that leads us right into attracting and retaining talent in this great resignation, which obviously is a huge issue. How are you attracting and sourcing talent? Have you looked at your website lately? Call Jocelyn. She can absolutely help you refresh that, right? That's your primary place that laterals are going to look to see what kind of firm you are. For me, recruiters have absolutely been hit or miss. They're probably better on the staffing side than on the associate side. And surprisingly, I've had really good luck attracting lateral associates from LinkedIn. I never would have considered that in the past, but I think associates are definitely taking a more proactive approach to this. And are you able to increase salaries to compete with big law? Smaller firms just don't have that ability. So be creative, identify what sets your firm apart, and it doesn't have to be monetary. Some perks outside of money, allowing for that remote work flexibility, true learning opportunities and real world experience that you might get at smaller law firms that larger places won't offer you. Pro bono time is incredibly important to this younger generation. And then for litigation firms, especially in the last 2 years, did you have any sort of leniency to your billable hours requirements? Because obviously every litigation was stayed. So, how did you compensate for that? And these perks also apply to your ability to retain staff. How are your employees connecting to the firm? Like we talked about in the previous slide, engagement and socialization are huge. Burnout and stress management, we're finding out, is becoming a much larger problem in the current climate. So those are the things that we definitely need to address. Technology. How was your immediate transition to remote working? Did you have to purchase any new hardware? And did you run into supply chain issues? Like I remember in the middle of 2020 or 2021, I purchased 5 laptops. It took 4 months for them to actually get to me. It was crazy. And then on the software side, my firm had already implemented a remote desktop server. So, our employees were absolutely used to working remotely and accessing that. So remote working, that transition was seamless. On the other hand, we had newly implemented GoToMeeting for video conferencing, and nobody was proactively trained on that. So what happened during COVID? Everyone went to Zoom, they went to Teams, they went to WebEx, whatever our clients happen to be using. So without training, even the best tools you have in place are completely useless. And then also, how effective was your tech support? Is it time to reevaluate that? They might have been going through the Great Resignation too, just sourcing and keeping their tech support. On the finance side of things, the Paycheck Protection Program in 2020 kept most of us afloat, right? 2021, I think generally everyone saw huge increases in accounts receivable. Our clients were holding on to cash, and their accounts payable departments were also transitioning to this remote work scenario. And then, don't forget, mail delays were atrocious. I mean, USPS was inconsistent at best. And this is all on the heels of more restrictive e-billing systems that were already lengthening this e-billing process. I remember seeing some webinar, and I was really struck by a graphic of how law firms leak revenue. You've got your discounts, your client write-offs, your admin costs, the lengthy payment cycles. I actually had one client that implemented a quick approval discount, not pay, approval. So they can approve within 30 days and not pay us for a year. So, so you've got that challenge as well. So how are you changing your collection efforts in response to all of this? Are you able to increase salary or to increase your rates to offset salaries? I know that, our insurance company clients have no appetite for higher risk. That same client with a quick approval discount years ago held a reverse auction where your starting point was your current rates, and then you were encouraged to bid downward. So, this is all prior to COVID, and COVID has just made this much, much more difficult. So, and we all know that old AR is hard and nearly impossible to collect. So, be sure to stay on top of that. And finally, vendor contracts. Lease contracts are definitely the top issue. With all companies generally reducing their footprint, are landlords now entertaining lease renegotiations midterm? Did you look at your sublet capabilities and evaluate that? Are you implementing hoteling with your current staff? For the partner that wants to work in a hybrid situation, does he get to keep his corner office? You're paying for that. So how can you leverage these property managers with space to spare at this point? I'm getting real estate broker calls constantly. Spend the 5 minutes and pick their brains for some ideas, what they're seeing. It's often junior people. You can get some information out of them. Same with other vendor contracts. Turn the tables on these cold calls and get info on potential opportunities to consolidate or reduce terms. So we here at Build-In see this opportunity for firms to now reevaluate their operational structure, and we are launching a legal ops audit to offer an outside set of eyes to help you proactively plan for this new normal. Our signature process-driven approach includes interviews with your key stakeholders, your managing partner, administrative partner, legal administrator, accounting manager, everybody. And we'll review policies and procedures and develop an evaluation to uncover those quick wins, as well as identifying some longer term recommendations. And we want to help firms plan, source, and implement solutions. And our goal is to integrate those updated administrative processes that promote efficiency and realize some cost savings. So just to recap, the audit will encompass these 5 critical areas that we've talked about today, and we look forward to working with many of you, hopefully in the near future. And I'm at 14 minutes, Jocelyn.
Oh, you're great. Thank you so much, Grace. And thank you so much for doing this today. We really appreciate you giving us a little bit of insight into best practices for legal operations. And then we know that you can save the date for our May program. It's going to be on Tuesday, May 24th. Grace alluded to how hard it is to hire these days. And so we will talk about how to best navigate marketing gaps with fractional marketing coverage. So if you like us, if you like people who talk fast, that's me. Grace is working on it. You can sign up for our newsletter at hello@buildandpartners. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next month.